This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
Welcome back to the X-Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada on the Talkstar Radio Network, X-Zone Broadcast Network, UK High Definition Radio, Euro High Definition Radio, Star Cable, and Ustream TV. Toll-free worldwide, 1-800-610-7035. That is toll-free. My email address is xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv at hotmail.com. And our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. One of the most compelling stories for the existence of extraterrestrial life, visitation, and alien abduction is the story my next guest has told to the X-Zone Nation over the years, and is, in my opinion, one of the most credible stories that I have ever heard. Travis Walton is with us tonight here in the X-Zone. We're going to be talking to Travis about the incidents that happened in November 1975 when a group of 6 tree trimmers were driving back from work in a truck in the Site-Greve Apache National Forest in Arizona. The driver stopped the truck when he noticed a flying saucer was hovering about 15 feet above some nearby trees. Travis Walton, our guest this hour, approached the craft on foot, despite the objections of his workmates. He was then knocked to the ground by a blue and white light. When the men in the truck saw this, they were terrified and sped off down the road, leaving him for dead. Now, once they had calmed down, they returned to the spot and could not find any sign of Travis or the flying saucer. 5 days later, Travis was returned to Earth, wondering what happened to him for the past few days. Here's a website you're going to want to remember and visit: www.travis-walton.com. That's travis-walton.com. And Travis Walton, welcome back to the X-Zone. Always great having you on the show, Travis.
How you doing, Rob?
I'm doing super, Travis, and it seems that your story is starting to pick up steam again. There's a lot of chatter about you on the internet. Different shows are talking about you, and everybody is now pointing to your story going back to November 1975 as the Rosetta Stone for alien abductions.
Well, I don't understand the phenomenon. I'm all of a sudden getting email from all over the world at a higher rate. So I don't know. The movie's been out for, 17 years?
Has it been that long?
Wow.
It
doesn't seem that long. I talked to a couple here recently that said that they went in to rent the movie and they had to get on a waiting list. And they were amazed that after this much time the movie would be that popular.
Travis, you and I have to take a 2-minute commercial break. Please stand by. Always great having you on the show, Travis. Travis Walton is our special guest, X-Zone Nation. www.travis-walton.com. That's www.travis-walton.com. And Travis and I will be back on the other side of this 2-minute commercial break as the X-Zone continues live and around the world from our studios in beautiful Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away. Travis Walton is my guest. We're talking about Fire in the Sky. Once again, www.travis-walton.com. We'll be back. Don't go away, X Zone Nation.
Take a step back in time and discover old Florida cuisine at Marsh Landing Restaurant in Fellsmere. Enjoy delicacies such as frog legs, gator tail, catfish, and swamp cabbage, or enjoy the more traditional cuisine like hand-cut Angus steaks, ribs, and seafood. Join us for breakfast with a southern flair featuring sweet potato pancakes, biscuits and gravy, and much more. Planning a party? Marsh Landing's private dining room can accommodate groups from 8 to 80 people. While you're visiting, enjoy the historic pictures, artifacts, and stories that line the walls. Marsh Landing is truly a unique experience. Marsh Landing Restaurant, 44 North Broadway in historic Fellsmere, or visit marshlandingrestaurant.com. Marsh Landing, Old Florida cuisine at its best.
Are you interested in the paranormal, ghosts, UFOs, or psychic phenomenon? Join me, Tim Bartley, co-host of Talking to Spirits with Lightworkers Tim and Justina, coming mid-January 2017 to the XZBN. We will channel spirits live and talk to them, revealing all kinds of amazing information. Spiritual attachments will be found and removed on the show, and so much more. To find out when you can listen to Talking to Spirits with Lightworkers Tim and Justina, visit www.xzbn.net for listeners on both sides of the veil.
Welcome back, X Zone Nation. Travis Walton is our special guest of this hour, www.travis-walton.com. And Travis, when you talk to your family about the sudden interest or the renewed interest in your story in the movie Fire in the Sky, does anybody have any idea why all of a sudden, after all these years, it's starting to spike all over again?
I don't understand it, and nobody else does either. It's just all of a sudden, I don't know. It's kind of a synergism of different things that who could fathom that? But I think it just over time, it gradually soaks in. You know, the mainstream media is on one end of what affects, people out there, but
Sure.
Then from the other side, there's the internet and word of mouth, and it all just kind of percolates and reaches a critical mass of some kind. I don't know.
And of course, your story, as I said in the introduction, to many of us, is the Rosetta Stone because of your credibility, because of the media scrutiny, the scrutiny by law enforcement, as well as the scrutiny of your friends, relatives, neighbors. It's a story that... Well,
and importantly, the scrutiny of the debunkers.
Exactly.
Who I took head on, and in the book, I took each and every charge and pointed people to verifiable, independently, available information to, people said I just totally blew their theories out of the water.
What is the most frequent question you get asked, Travis, when you go to symposiums and other gatherings where UFO people, people who are in search of the truth, gather to try and find out what is out there and what is the truth? Because you've been there, What do they ask you? What kind of questions do they ask you?
That'd be tough to say what was really the most common, but one that's probably run into every time is why, and why me, and that's something that's weighed heavy on my mind for 35 years, or almost 35, and I really still don't have an answer. Probably my pet theory is that I just did the wrong thing at the wrong time and caused something to happen that otherwise wouldn't have.
You know, many of us would say you did something right at the right time and came back to tell us all about it.
Well, I was certainly wanted to come back. That was my
Yeah.
overriding thought throughout the experience. When I came to, I was in such a panic to get out of there. I was thinking, open a door and jump out.
Right.
I wasn't thinking very clearly, and my mind was really clouded by hysteria. But I was in the back of my mind, I guess, assuming that the craft was still hovering above the ground in the woods, and I could open a door and jump to the ground. But probably wasn't the case. And
Yeah.
had I actually been able to open a door, that might have been a big mistake.
You know, watch out for that first step. It's a doozy, and it's not the fall that kills, it's the sudden stop.
Yeah.
What was it like inside the craft, Travis? What do you remember?
Well, in the movie, they portray it as a kind of an organic look, and irregular and all cluttered, but it wasn't anything like that. It was very machined and sterile, a very featureless sort of metallic interior. It was dimly lit and very cramped. It was a very claustrophobic feeling, probably mostly because I just couldn't seem to catch my breath. I couldn't get enough air. I don't know whether that was because of the atmosphere in there or some injury from being hit with the beam.
What did it look like? What not did it look like, but what did those inside of the craft look like? Do you have any recall of their appearance or how they treated you, what kind of feeling you got from them?
Well, the first thing I laid eyes on when I finally regained enough of my senses was these creatures. And, up to that point, I'd been assuming that I'd been hurt, in approaching the craft, but then that I'd been taken by the crew to the emergency room. And so I thought I was in a hospital.
Yeah.
I could hear the sounds of movement around me, but when I finally could focus, I could see these weren't doctors. These were these creatures, and I just flipped out. To me, that was what dominated my nightmares for quite some time after the incident, was looking into the face of these creatures who just seemed to be looking right into me, and it was just very, very uncomfortable, to say the least.
One of our listeners in Toronto, Ontario, would like to know, how was the movie, how was it as far as reality compared to the actual events? We talked about how they made the spacecraft like an organic substance, and you said it was metallic machined. How else did the movie deviate from the actual accounts?
Well, this was a story that was large and involved a lot of time and a lot of people and covered a lot of... So they did simplify things. And, some of those kinds of changes are understandable. I had two brothers, Don and Dwayne, that were combined into one character named Dan. Several investigators and lawmen were combined into one character played by James Garner, and another character played by Noble Willingham.
Right.
But, they shortened things up in terms of time and distance, and actually they even reduced the number of crew. There was 7 of us out there, and they had a 6-man crew in the movie. So, they made minor changes like that aren't really critical to an understanding of the story. But other things they did, like, for instance, at the end of the movie, you'll see a credit that says Geiger Counter Man, and there's no such scene in the movie because they cut it out. Because this is something that actually happened at the site, where a guy came along and found high radiation readings, but they couldn't fit that in and keep and maintain the illusion for the audience that maybe this crew had murdered me and made up a story to cover up for what they'd done. That he was taken by a UFO. That's why he's not here anymore. See. So, and then in the movie they introduced this idea that there was a tabloid about aliens in the crew truck, and that simply didn't happen. I didn't even know what a tabloid was. I don't know if they sold them in this town in those days, but there was probably the greatest amount of fictionalization was the part aboard the craft, but there's one scene in there that actually served the purpose of communicating what I went through better than showing what actually happened, and that was that feeling of suffocation that added so much to my feeling of panic. I mean, nothing will make you feel panic more than having your air cut off. And, having that feeling right when I saw him is what just set me off and made me lose control to such a high degree. But in the movie, they had the actor shown with this membrane over his face where he's struggling to breathe.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that communicates to the audience much more directly what I felt, rather than showing an actor standing there breathing hard, looking panicked. You really wouldn't understand the lack of oxygen thing doing it that way.
Travis, did you see other humans in the craft?
Well, I was taken out of that craft by some people that I took to be human, but because of the way they treated me and the way they reacted, I came to have doubts were these really, people, that maybe there are beings out there that look indistinguishable from us. They were human-looking. Now, in the movie, they had, partially decomposed humans in there, and that didn't happen at all. So, the only humans I saw were definitely in control of their own actions. However, I don't know whether they were cooperating with these creatures or subservient to them, or maybe even staging some kind of intervention. I don't know.
Has anyone ever proposed to you that the entire event may have actually been conducted by humans posing as extraterrestrials?
Actually, it occurred to me because of certain things that came to light. The fact that I learned later that there was a man from military intelligence on the next ridge who witnessed the whole thing. He came forward, and Paramount had him polygraphed, and he passed the part about being from military intelligence,
right,
and seeing the craft and the beam and everything. But when he was asked about being in league with people who were out to discredit the incident, he flunked the test. So I really, wondered about, was this possibly some kind of great big government mind control experiment? So I went online and I Googled mind control, and man, I'll tell you, the covert agencies of various governments on Earth have been up to a lot of mischief.
They sure have. They sure have at the public's expense in more ways than one. We fund it, and then they use the citizens who have funded their project as guinea pigs.
Yeah, and so that made me wonder if that didn't happen to me. So, I've accepted the term extraterrestrial and spacecraft and that kind of thing, but to be accurate, I couldn't say. They didn't communicate that to me. They could be from our past, our future, another dimension, or be the creation of some Earth-based agency, or at least in league with them.
All right, Travis, you and I have to take our break at the bottom of the hour for the news. Exonation Travis Walton is our special guest. We're talking about Fire in the Sky, going back to 1975, November. More with Travis when we come back to the X Zone. His website is www.travis-walton.com. That's www.travis-walton.com. 1-800-610-7035. Worldwide toll free. Xzone at xzoneradiotv.com is my email address. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv at hotmail.com, and our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. We'll be back on the other side of this commercial break, and if you'd like to listen to this interview at any time, go to xzonepodcast.com.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
Exo Nation, Travis Walton is our special guest. Going back to November of 1975, a group of 6 tree trimmers were driving home from work in a truck in Arizona. The driver stopped the truck when he noticed a flying saucer was hovering about 15 feet above some nearby trees. Travis Walton approached the craft on foot despite the objections of his workmates. He was knocked to the ground by a blue and white light. Now, when the men in the truck saw this, they were terrified and sped off down the road, leaving Travis for dead. Once they had calmed themselves down, they returned to the spot and couldn't find any sign of Travis or the flying saucer. 5 days later, on November the 10th, 1975, Travis was returned to Earth wondering what had happened to him in the past few days. Now, the connection that I made with you several years ago, Travis, was November the 10th, 1975, when the Edmund Fitzgerald sank under very, very suspicious circumstances in Lake Superior. And we also found records of jet interceptors being vectored to a UFO above the spot where the Edmund Fitzgerald sank.
Wow.
Yeah. And you and I discussed this years ago.
I forgot about the jets.
Yeah. So you know, I find this is why your story to me is one of the top 3 most credible out there. Because there's the testimony of the other people that were in the truck with you. There was the testimony of the person who was with military intelligence. There was all the scrutiny that you went under. There's the radar vectoring of the United States Air Force jets that were sent from Sethridge Air Force Base to intercept or to investigate a UFO in the skies over Lake Superior, right where the Edmund Fitzgerald went down. There were no bodies ever recovered from the Edmund Fitzgerald. So there's a lot of facts when you put into the whole picture about your story that you have to say, my God, this can't be made up. There's too much evidence. And your story, your story
it really is remarkable that they never recovered a body, because the distress signal, they had people on site so quickly.
That's right.
And the lake really wasn't all that deep, and yet to never ever recover a single body is out of 29 people.
Yeah.
And by the way, that night I was making a call to my brother-in-law Grant, and that was the name of one of the 29 that went down, Grant Walton.
A lot of coincidences in this story, my friend. Now,
yeah, it is.
You've got a new book out, don't you?
Yeah, I've revised and updated it and finally got it out there. I've been getting requests almost daily for a long time, people wanting to find it, and all they can find is the used copies online going for hundreds of dollars. So I finally got it done, and have, just updated it with information about, where I'm at, and even some more recent documentation. I recently passed my 5th and 6th positive polygraph tests in regard to this incident, which brings the total to 16 positive polygraph tests relative to the incident. But I was interested in getting the most rigid, stringent test I could get. So I went to New Mexico because results are admissible in court there.
Right.
And the most highly recommended examiner does work for the New Mexico State Prison, Albuquerque Police Department, and even the United States Marshal's Office. And he was employing a new state-of-the-art equipment with a 5-trace machine with a digital computer scoring that parallels the examiner scoring. So it was the best available, and I passed that at the highest level. So I document that in the book, and some other interesting developments.
I've got a question here from another listener who's listening to us on Ustream TV. His name is Rob, and he would like to know if you have had any contact, whether in dream or through thought process, or even in maybe physical contact with the abductors from that
Well,
night.
you know, that would have been my biggest nightmare for a long time.
Yeah.
Additional contact, but you know, I get that question quite often. My answer is always, if it did happen, I wouldn't tell anybody. But as far as, you know, in thought process or something like that, I did start having some dreams that were different than the original nightmares, which of course were mainly those creatures. The dreams were more these blue uniforms. But I was talking with Colin Andrews here a while back, and
Right.
he brought something to suggested something that I hadn't thought of. He says, you know, when people are under anesthesia or unconscious, very often they will record and sense events around them, even though they're not actually conscious.
That's
you know?
right.
And so maybe there was some kind of bits of information picked up in that manner.
Has the military ever tried to thwart you from speaking? Or, you know, we hear these stories about the men in black, the government agencies who've tried to make people's lives hell. Has this ever happened to you?
I think there was a sort of a shot at that. A guy came to town. He showed his ID, a badge. He was a federal criminal investigator, and he was trying to concoct some kind of a scheme and pin it on the crew boss concerning government contracts. And he wrote up a confession and tried to get Mike to sign. He says, I ain't signing that. That's not even true. And so the guy left town quite angry, but unsuccessful. And but I think the message was, shut up, or else we can make life difficult for you. And the reason I think that is because I found that out later that he'd gone down and consulted the sheriff's file on the investigation of the UFO incident, which was totally unrelated to what he was in town for. So,
how have the people in town come to to accept what happened going back to November 1975, and how has your family been able to cope with these events over the years?
Well, you know, the movie focused on the negative reaction of the town, and there certainly was that, you know. But it wasn't all bad, and that actually added more to the turmoil because people were so divided on it. Like the town marshal didn't believe it, but his wife did. However, his brother, who was a former sheriff and also a county deputy, did believe it, but his wife didn't. So just among those four, you had a division that was, you know, split down the middle of the marriage. So, you know, throughout town there was a lot of controversy, but a lot of that had to do with disinformation that was being put out there. You know, theories that I'd had a transitory psychosis or a drug hallucination and all these kinds of things, and all that was disproved later, and so that information is gradually filtered out to them, and so, you know, it's reduced that, but there's still people out there who think, oh, they proved that was a drug hallucination. But the truth was, I had blood and urine samples put through the county medical examiner's drug screen, which showed no trace of any drug. And I had a whole battery of psychiatric exams that showed that I was perfectly normal, and, you know, there was nothing like of that nature. But, you know, both of those theories don't take into account that 7 people had the same quote-unquote hallucination.
Are the 7 of you still close? Do you talk about the events, or have you drifted your own separate ways?
Well, we weren't close at the time. We were just a crew of guys that were together for the purpose of the job, and really didn't hang out with each other, as a group, even while we were a crew that worked together. So, I don't think there's been a reunion except maybe for one picture for an article once in all these years. As a matter of fact, I hadn't heard from the youngest guy on the crew, Steve, for about 30 years or more, and he called me a few months ago, and his memory of everything is just as vivid as everything. Of course, there was always a little, interaction with the crew, not necessarily on a friendly basis. When he first saw my book come out reporting about, him being one of the ones that was crying when the sheriff come to talk to the crew,
Right.
he was mad about that, and he come over to my house and he wanted to fight. But, I was able to make him understand that, he wasn't the only one crying and he wasn't the only one upset. And, if anybody was the most scared, it was me. So, I was, again, trying to straighten things out with this last contact with him over the issue of the crew running off and leaving me. I've heard comments from, I still get them occasionally where people say, yeah, a real bunch of heroes there, but, I do not find fault with those guys for doing that, and I do commend them for having the courage to come back and try to rescue me that night. And I always want to get that out there because, a lot of people think that they sort of betrayed me. But, when they saw me get hit, they thought, they were so sure that I was dead that, one or two of them even yelled that out right when it happened. And so they figured they were next. They didn't have any weapons. And what good would it do to greater endanger themselves when I'm already dead? So it was understandable that if they thought they were next, that they would take off.
Travis, what was your last conscious memory?
I recall waking up face down. Cold air brought me awake. I was kind of at the edge of the road, a pavement, and there was a light above me. I looked up in time to see this craft take off. And then I looked around and recognized the town down below and ran down and called my family.
What would you say, Travis, to someone who may be listening somewhere on this great planet of ours who has had an experience? They've been taken aboard a craft and returned, and they don't know what to do. What would you...
Well, that's a question I get a lot, and I don't think I'm very helpful on that score because everybody has to really weigh the two factors. How would this affect me to know for sure whether something happened, undergo hypnosis or whatever. And then, having established that, how would it affect my life in my present situation to have other people know about what happened? And whether they want to come forward or not is really a personal choice. And for myself, I wouldn't recommend it, but, like I say, it's, like I was saying, if it happened again, I wouldn't come forward because of the negative that it's brought to my life.
How did the events going back to 1975 affect your family?
Well, disbelievers, haven't really confronted me directly. I'm not the kind of person who'd put up with that.
Yeah.
But the little things, the undercurrent, the subtext, the things that you really don't have any control over, that can be very frustrating. But I have come gradually to a situation where I just care a whole lot less what those kind of people think, because when I say those kind of people, it's the kind of person who passes judgment without having examined the evidence. In the book, I quote Emerson, condemnation without investigation is the height of ignorance. And so, all I really insisted on is that if people are going to decide whether they, believe this really happened or not, take a look at the facts first, and then decide, and then it's up to you.
Sure.
'Cause I don't claim to have absolute proof. What happened, happened.
Travis, we have to take our final break for this hour, but when we come back, I'd like you to answer this question. Do you consider yourself to be a ufologist? Do you follow UFOs? Do you pay interest into the phenomenon? And if not, why not? We'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with Travis Walton from Fire in the Sky, X-Zone Nation. He's got his new book out. It's available by going to his website at www.traviswalton.com. That's www.travis-walton.com. I'm sorry, www.travis-walton.com. We'll be back on the other side of this commercial break. More with Travis Walton as the X-Zone continues from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada on the Talkstar Radio Network, X-Zone Broadcast Network, UK High Definition Radio, Euro High Definition Radio, and Star Cable.
19 Sergeant Central. 19 Sergeant check. Officers on the scene.
Hi, I'm Larry Lawson, host of Paranormal Stakeout. With over 36 years in law enforcement, I have learned a few things. The most important is the proper gathering and preservation of evidence is vital to putting the bad guy behind bars. It's no different in the world of paranormal investigation. Whether it's the search for the afterlife, cryptozoology, UFOs, and extraterrestrials, how we gather the evidence, preserve that evidence, and present it to a jury of our peers will make the ultimate difference in proving the existence of worlds and entities that are beyond our imagination. Join me, Larry Lawson, every week on Paranormal Stakeout when, along with my guests, we'll take a journey to prove with indisputable evidence what man has struggled to believe for centuries. Go to xzbn.net for the broadcast schedule and check me out at paranormalstakeout.com.
I am Dr. Carl O'Helvey, founder, president of a new cancer foundation focusing on evidence-based physical, mental, and spiritual interventions, including natural cancer cures, prayer, meditation, affirmations, nutrition, and other related holistic cancer prevention and cure modalities. These are used in cancer education, research, and financing care. I ask for your help to continue this important work by donating at www.holisticcancerfoundation.com.
You're listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xz. Travis Walton is our special guest this hour, X-Zone Nation. Now, if you'd like to get a copy of the new Fire in the Sky, you can only get it through Travis's website at www.travis-walton.com. His email address is there. Send Travis an email directly, and he'll tell you exactly how to proceed and get a copy of his book. Travis, before we went to the commercial break, I asked you if you're active in UFO research, alien abduction, and if not, why?
Well, I haven't been in it, and it's been a coping strategy. Mm-hmm. To me, I had enough on my hands to deal with what happened to me.
Right.
And, the field is, kind of spotty with what you can rely on and what you can't, so I just kind of focused on what I could handle, which is what happened to me, and sort of shut all that out for a while. I was cautious about letting the whole, genre take over my life, but over time, I've gradually, picked up on a few things.
Right.
I haven't been a student of the subject at all, and so, when people ask me about my opinion about other other investigators or other cases, I decline to comment because, there's some good ones and there's some bad ones, and without having done investigation, I don't feel that it would be right to comment. I have to live by the standard I ask for my own case, is to not judge without investigation. So, however, in these latter days, I have been thinking about doing something, and that would be to put together a little bit of a pamphlet or a little small guidebook about how best to conduct investigations into the subject. Having been on the receiving end of that kind of thing, I think I could be helpful in setting some standards that might, elevate the field and increase respectability with the mainstream media.
Travis, we're running out of time really fast. Here's my final question for you. When you look up in the sky at night and you see all those stars, what do you think about?
Well, it's not the same at all as it was before those years. I realize the vastness of it's becoming more and more of just a fact of life, that there are other planets out there, and that there is life out there, and it's intelligent life. And someday it's not going to be some supernatural sort of monster sort of a thing. It's going to be those different sort of people that live way over there that we don't quite know very much about.
Travis, I want to thank you so much for joining us. Always a great pleasure talking to you. I wish you and yours the very best. And I look forward to the next time you and I meet here in the X Zone. Take care of yourself, my friend. You
take care.
Bye-bye. Travis Walton. If you'd like to get a copy of his new book, Fire in the Sky, his updated book, his website is www.travis-walton.com. Click on his contact information, send him an email, and he'll contact you, and you'll be able to get your copy. More of the X Zone on the other side of this commercial break as we continue from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada on the Talkstar Radio Network, X Zone Broadcast Network, UK High Definition Radio, Euro High Definition Radio, and Star Cable, as well as Ustream TV. We'll be back on the other side of the news. Don't go away.